Hello, readers. This is Mrs. Harding, and I'd like to review with you what reading closely means. So, to read closely means you're really paying attention to the text and you're reading slowly. You're often reading more than one time through, maybe two, three, even four times um, the same text again and again. It's not something that you would do with a large amount of text. You're not going to read closely a whole novel, right? That would just be too much. I guess you could if you really wanted to, but normally this involves a paragraph or one page or so of text that you're really pondering and trying to understand multiple layers of what the author is saying and why. And one of the main things to do when you read closely is to start with just understanding why you're even reading what you're reading. So, what is the purpose for reading? So, if you look at this graphic I have here for you, it says that one of the first things for close reading is that you're aware of your purposes for reading. So, why are you reading the text? Often, I or the curriculum will tell you why I am presenting certain text to you. For example, in this lesson, you're going to be reading a myth, and why you're reading it is because it's alluded to in the Percy Jackson book that we are reading. So it's going to deepen your understanding of the novel that we're reading if you have some understanding of some different myths. So when you're reading, think about why you're reading it, your purpose for reading. You also want to focus on the information about the topic, the structure, the author's view. So just some key background information about the topic that you're reading, like the fact that you're reading a myth. You know, this isn't something that's a factual scientific document. It's a myth of an some people believed a long time ago. The structure and language of the text just helps you understand how the author wrote the text. And then the author's view. Maybe some text, the author might have an opinion about what he or she is writing. And so that can be important to know. You also want to take note of some of the basics of the text. Who is the author? What's the title? What type of text is it? Is it a novel? Is it something that's fictional and made up? Is it an article from a newspaper? Etc. Who published a text and when was it published? Sometimes you might skip over those things that might not be as important, but it is important when you think of like how old the text is. For example, the one you're reading today is an old myth. It's not something that people generally believe today. Then there's also some guiding questions that you can think about while you're reading. So these were things more for before you're reading, when you approach the text, which means like right when you see the text before you read. And then you get into questions about like while you're actually reading. So you want to focus your attention mostly on what is the text mostly about, right? So what are the key ideas presented in the text? And this gets into more details about that, like what are the ideas presented at the beginning? What's described in detail? What is the author really trying to explain to you and want you to know and understand and remember? What words stand out to you as you first examine the text? So, one of the things that you can do when you closely read a text is to read it through the first time just to get the gist of the text. And that's what I really recommend that you do first is just read through it one time just to get the gist, which remember that means to understand like a short summary of just what is the text mostly about. After you've done that, you can read through it again with if you have it printed out, you could have a marker or highlighter. Highlighter especially would be good, or a pen in your hand, and you can mark up the text. So you could highlight words that stand out to you, words that maybe the author is using again and again, or maybe words that you don't know or that you aren't as familiar with, or words that you just think are really important that are showing the main idea. You could also jot down in the margins questions that you have as you're reading, or just things that really jump out to you that you think are important, maybe new facts that you've learned. So that's what these questions are all relating to. Like what phrases or words stand out to you? What seem powerful? What words maybe cause some emotion in you that maybe you feel excited or worried, or you have some sort of strong emotion too. Um, and then you might want to even find words that you don't know that you need to define. So you need to figure out the meaning so that you can understand the text better. And then, like I said before, are there any words that are repeated? Because those are often important if the author's using them again and again. Now, if you haven't printed out the text, you could still do this. Just use a highlighter tool in a Word document, and you could still mark up the text on your computer. And then as you're reading, make sure you're really focused on the text, that you're not thinking about anything other than what you're reading. And it's normal to have your mind start wandering, but if that happens, then try to get yourself focused back on the text and reread. So this talks about analyzing what the text has presented to you. So thinking deeply about the details that you have found through questioning. You want to determine their meaning and their importance. So you're trying to figure out what details the author has said to you and why, and what's the most important ones, and analyze how they're connected. You might even think about different ideas and how it's connected to your own life, or maybe something you have read before in the past or are reading currently. Today, in the text that you're reading, The New Myth, you might want to compare it to what you've been reading in Percy Jackson and how you see connections there, or in maybe other myths if you've read other myths. Or maybe some of the ideas make you think of a movie or TV show you've seen. Any of those kind of connections are important. So I'm going to actually scroll down now and just show you a little more condensed version of this. When you're reading closely, before you even read, you want to think about some of the key things about the text before you even begin. So just to reiterate, you want to think about your purpose for reading and the important information about the text. So take note of who's the author, what's the title, what kind of text is it, and then be aware of your purpose for reading. So why are you reading it? Just knowing that will help you understand the text more and have you focus more on the text, because you'll understand why you're even reading it. And that gives you more of a direction while you're reading. And you should just focus on what is the content, the information. So what is the author trying to teach you or explain to you? And what's the author's view? So now I'd like you, before we move on, just to think about this question. What does approaching the text mean to you in your own words? And there's this word here that says paraphrase. So paraphrase means to put something in new words, and it's usually done to make something be clearer or to help you understand something more. So we're asking you to now paraphrase what you just heard me say and what these pages are saying about approaching the text. What does approaching the text mean in your own words? So please take some time to think about that now. You can jot down your answer and then move on. Thanks, readers.